Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight I have 5 terrifying real reports and true stories concerning encounters with the Dogman, or cryptid canines. With 2 of these reports, I've contacted the experiencer for more information and got some interesting replies. Whatever you do, you don't want to miss this one, so grab your gear and let's ride to Dogman country.
Number 1. Dear Biker, I was referred to you for an explanation. I don't know what I saw. It could have been a bear, though to my knowledge, they don't live in eastern South Dakota. Anyway, here's what happened. So one night, when there was a blood moon, I decided to try and get some decent pictures of it, and I went to a secluded spot just outside of town. Pulling into the area, I noticed a youngish tree, 3 to 5 inches in diameter, had fallen by a nearby creek right by where you could park your car to shorefish. I started setting up the scope and camera, and then I heard a lot of rustling in the brush. Since coyotes are common enough, I had my handgun on my hip, so I didn't pay it much mind, but the rustling soon became more akin to something violently crashing through the woods. At this point, I stopped what I was doing and shined my flashlight around to try and see what it was. I couldn't see anything, but was concerned by the sound, so I started to pack my stuff up to leave when I heard some splashing, followed by the sound of a very large crack. I turned and drew my weapon while pointing my light at the fallen tree, and there it stood. Everything was suddenly in slow motion. This 6-foot-tall thing, with what seemed to me at the time have the face of a wolf, but it was much, much too large to be a wolf or coyote. It was roughly as tall as I am, 6 feet. And as the light hit it, it paused and looked at me, growled, and actually charged. I fired off 8 shots in quick succession before it barreled into me, knocking me flat, but rather than follow through on the attack, it just kept running until it disappeared into the cornfield. I got up and left the rest of my things and came back the next day to find a farmer, a few sheriffs, and a game warden. The farmer had sheep, and a few of them had been killed the night before, so he'd been driving around setting up trail cams and stumbled upon my things. The weird trail of smashed corn, as well as some strange prints in the mud, he had called the game warden. And apparently the sheriffs were bored and came to check out things too. I told them about what I saw, and I was told that it was probably a bear, but I saw those tracks, and they were definitely not bear tracks, so I don't believe the story they were saying. Thanks for reading. Signed, Wendell. Number 2. Hello, sir. I live on an acreage in Strathcona County, Alberta, and to get home I have to drive down the main road, past farms, subdivisions, and other acreages. In August of 2014, I was driving home from work at midnight. In one of the ditches, when I was about 500 meters away, my high beams illuminated a wolf's head and eyes. It was moving slightly, as though it was eating something or sniffing around for something, but my lights didn't show me what. We have coyotes out where we live, and everyone has dogs, but the coyotes are too cowardly to be that close to the road, and few people let their dogs roam loose at night. Most importantly, it was way too big for a coyote or a dog. It was even too big for a wolf. It looked like the size of a bear. As I got closer, it stood up, about the height of a man, maybe a little taller, on 2 legs, and it started moving towards me. At this point, I passed it at 100 kilometers an hour and didn't look back. I was way too scared to try and think about what it really was. Because this sighting was only about 3 kilometers from my house, so I ran inside the moment I pulled into the driveway. I'm fully convinced that I saw some type of werewolf. The location was in the middle of Alberta, in Strathcona County, which is just east of Edmonton. Signed, Anonymous. Number 3. Hey, Tattooed. I know this will seem like BS to most people, but there was a Rugaru, or a Dogman creature, that used to sit in the clearing past our driveway. I lived in a very rural bayou in southwest Louisiana. When I was a teen, I used to sneak out of the house and stay up late. Standard rebel teenager nonsense. No towns or anything for miles in all directions from our property, so the only light was a massive searchlight past our garage. And being on a huge property meant that just about anything, from coyotes to panthers, could roll out of the woods at any moment, but I was used to it. What I wasn't used to was the thing that would sit out in the clearing from time to time, especially in the winter. It'd just sit under the searchlight, and kind of the way one does when you sit on the ground with your legs straight out, holding its tail and picking at the ground. At first I thought we just had wolves or coyotes, but eventually I made the stupid man in a horror film decision to step out and whistle at it. Maybe it was a stray dog. I learned my lesson when it got up on 2 legs and stared straight at me, before hopping the chain link fence and running out onto the highway. It came back every few weeks or so in the early mornings or late nights, usually just sitting in that clearing, digging at the crawfish holes or squatting at the end of the gravel driveway. Those nights that it showed up, I wouldn't sneak out. I moved away years later, and I often wonder if it's still there. It really wouldn't surprise me the property was haunted, or at least had bodies buried on it. The headstones behind the barn always kind of freaked me out, but not as much as the Rugaru. I still have dreams about the way that it stared at me. Nobody that I've ever told has ever believed me, but my dog and I know what we saw night after night. Signed, Matthew. Number 4. Hey, biker. I have an experience that I'd like to share. You see, me and a good friend worked nights during the coronavirus shutdown, and while our job was closed, we would just go walk around the woods all night, since we were both outdoorsmen. We live in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. One night, I find a dump of antique bottles, all from the 1930s to 60s, by the foundation of what I assume was an abandoned outside kitchen. I'm happily digging away and putting all the ones I like in a box. We bring this box out of the trees and put it in my car, which is parked at the end of an abandoned service road. I turn off my headlamp and walk around the side of my car to find my buddy poking at a large spider on the ground. It's around this time, with both of our backs to the trees, that we hear a large bipedal run, beelining it straight for us from just inside the tree line. We dove into my car and we sped off, almost leaving my friend behind because I already had the car on and the foot on the gas before he even got the door open. We go back to his place and discuss what we heard. We didn't see anything because I didn't have any handheld lights on, and my headlights were off when we initially sped off. Thankful that I didn't hit a tree in the process, we go back to that spot about an hour later with long guns looking for anything. We didn't find or hear anything else. About a week later, in another part of the woods, but not very far from that encounter, we found a footprint on an anthill of a 4-claw toe that was about as long and more wide than my size 10 boot. This was in an area where black bears are only seen, and I'm originally from Colorado, and I've been stalked by bears before. One actually followed me for 30 minutes while on a hike. I know how bears operate, and I don't believe this was a bear. A person at the initial encounter would make some sense, but I don't know why they wouldn't just yell or shoot at us if we happened to be trespassing. And if it was a person that chased us, that still doesn't explain that print we found. We've been back to the area a handful of times. It was there for about a week before rain made it unrecognizable. I solo hike there in the day sometimes, but still never at night. And I never go back out there without any type of rifle or a weapon. Scary encounter for sure, and I don't want to do it again. Signed, Seth.
I emailed Seth back, who lives just west of me. The area where this occurred was west of McCroy State Forest, not far off US 30. He described the print to me. It was definitely not a black bear, and after I saw the photo, which he didn't give me permission to post or distribute, as he had submitted the report elsewhere and had promised exclusivity for the photo, it was not a bear. It wasn't a double print either. If I had to guess, I'd say it was canine-like. The print was deep in the forest soil and was about 11 inches long and more narrow than a human foot. This is a location where I've received other cryptid canine reports as well as Bigfoot sightings in the past.
Number 5. Hey TB, back in 2000 I was hunting small game with my mom, dad, and our Labrador Retriever in a 200-acre public area about an hour north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and just east of Fond du Lac. We were walking in a line from a dirt road through a field of waist-high grass. The field was about 40 acres, and we were walking to the edge of a wet marsh. I was on the left side with my dog, my dad in the middle, and my mom over on the right edge. My parents were about halfway in, and I was just ahead of them, about 15 feet, when I heard a growling, snarling, grunting, panting, and heavy breathing noise coming from behind me, between me and my dad. We were in waist-high, thick, and wild grass, and I could see the top half of this creature moving as fast as someone running a full sprint on a track. At first I thought it was a black bear, but only a few have ever been sighted in this half-state in the last 50 years. This creature was much longer and more slender than a bear, and it had very defined muscles. It actually looked like a 7-foot-tall, muscular man, down on all fours, with black body hair, 4 to 6 inches in length, covering his whole body. The face, it didn't have a snout. It had hands and human feet. It looked close to human, with eyes like a human, but it smelled like a wet dog. It ran very, very fast and covered the 40-acre field in just seconds. Each stride was at least 6 feet apart, even though it was thick, waist-high grass. And when it passed, it looked at me, snarled and growled as it passed just a few feet away. It eventually disappeared into the marsh, and we left. Signed, Trent.
Quick narrator's note here. I emailed Trent back asking for more details if possible, and he added the following information.
Dear Biker, thank you for the response email. And I can add a few things. I swear it was running like a 7-foot-tall bent over and running on all fours. It actually looked very uncomfortable, and it struck me as odd for how fast it was able to move that way. The grass was 36 to 40 inches tall. It's natural sawgrass. And the grass went from patchy to areas of dense and even thicker. I was able to see this thing's hands and feet very clearly as it ran within just a few feet of me. As it ran, its hands went out in front of it like a swimmer, and its feet kicked out back like an animal. I saw the left hand and foot really well as it took a few strides. Since I'm 6'1", and I was looking down on it, and I saw its face, back and left side, really clearly as it ran by me and my dog. My dog was absolutely terrified and cowering after the experience. Signed, Trent. And there it is. All I have tonight on cryptid canines and Dogman encounter stories. So what did you think about these experiences? I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments down below, but please, keep it respectful for the sake of the experiencers. And if you have ever had an unexplained sighting or experience that you'd like to share, just send it to the email and the address in the description, and your experience may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.